Hello everybody, Kate Crane here with another video for Grafix. Today I'm going to build up an art journal page and I'm going to use the Duralar, the matte film. This is a translucent film so you can see a little bit through it, but it's beautiful for stamping on and building up collage. It gives a completely different look. This film actually is very versatile. It's great for pencil drawing, tracing. You can add your markers, you can stamp on it. It takes colour, alcohol ink beautifully. And I'm also going to use some of the double tack mounting film because my collage is probably going to get bitty, small tiny bits, and this is a great way of just putting one strip of sticky down and building things on top without individually gluing every tiny little bit. I'm working in a craft journal because I like to leave some of the background just showing the card. It's a nice balance with all the colourful bits I'm going to put on top. Or you could work on something like a large craft tag. I'm going to build up as well using some smaller tags just for a bit of, with the layering, I've also gathered up some other scraps that I can use to add to all of my colourful and stamped bits of old ledger. I've got some scraps of backgrounds that I've made previously, or this could be scrapbook papers, gel plate prints, anything at all you've got lying around. I'm going to use possibly a little bit of washi tape or pet tape to build up some added layers and colour. And I have dug out some stamps. I've got a texture stamp here and a couple of feature stamps, one or both of those I may use. I use a Ranger Archival ink because I know that once this dries it doesn't budge. To begin with, I'm going to stamp some bits onto my film. I find it much easier to put collage together if I've got everything cut out ready to go. I can move things around and play with it. And I will also add a little bit of alcohol ink because that is one surefire way of adding a pop of colour to the page, and alcohol ink looks quite different on here than it does on some of the clear films. So I've got this vine stamp here. I think you can probably see how that stamps really nicely on here and gives a completely different look to stamping, say, onto white card. And here I'm using this texture stamp. So I've gathered up a mixture of colours of alcohol ink. You can see how that starts to travel. And then maybe just a little bit of blending solution. And now I need to leave everything on there to dry. So I'm working 6 by 6 here, but you can scale this up, scale it down, it really doesn't matter. And I've got a couple of extra tags which I can layer on my page. This also allows me to build my collage on here, and then if I want to add any stitching I can do all of that and then stick it down into the book. So I've got some scraps. These really are scraps, tiny bits of colour. Don't overthink this, it's really just little tiny leftover bits or bits of papers, whatever you have. And I'm going to build those along there. I've got a little bit of ledger there, just a bit of colour. This is a bit of wax craft, which you can crinkle up. That might be quite nice with a bit of stitching on. Things like this as well. I've got a little vintage style sticker, might go in there somewhere. And even bits like leftover punched out bits. So that's what I've got going so far, but what I now need is some of my alcohol ink here, and actually what I really do like is the edges often. That creates its own gorgeous little pattern, and I'm going to cut out my bits here ready to mount onto my collage. I've got my embellishment cut out now, and that's going to sit somewhere around here. But what I'm going to do is use a little bit of the double tack mounting film just to hold that tag in place, and then I'm going to add an extra bit so I can start to build things on top. Now I'm not going to cover the whole thing in tape because I want to be able to put things under and over, but just enough to hold everything in place. A bit of that film just here is enough for me just to hold bits in place. Now I want some alcohol ink down here. The interesting thing about this film is when you put it on a manila or a cream card, it just completely disappears. So I'm going to use this edge and just build a bit down that edge, a bit of colour. Cut that out roughly because remember that's not going to show. Eventually that one is going to just sit there like that, and I'm not putting that in place just yet. I want to play with my layers, my bits of colour. I'm just going to add them, stagger them a little bit. So I've got some little scraps here that I've stamped various bits on. Some of those are going to go underneath. So I don't need to worry about sticking those just yet. Bit of double tack tape under there is holding everything in place so that I can just play around with bits, but I know that it's held pretty securely there. And now I'm literally just playing about, moving things around, seeing what works. And to introduce a bit of colour down here in between those kind of stripes there, that gives you the freedom to add as much colour as you want to. I've got my bits roughly stuck down now, so that leaves me free to add some stitching. I'm eventually going to add a quote there as well. Other things that I could do, though, I've got this tiny bit here. This is my texture stamping bit that I put here, but I've cut the bottom bit off, which means can trim bits and also build those in here. So I'm going to stitch just randomly bits in place there, and then I'm going to do just some top layers to make sure everything looks kind of cohesive and together. I've added the stitching to mine and I've just followed lines. It's a pretty random, but I've just picked out lines of the collage to do all the messes on the back, and that will be hidden when I stick that into my journal. A few more things I'm going to add. I've got this downloadable quote here. I'll probably cut it into smaller bits and build that up on the front there, but I've also got some, these are actually pet tapes. These are the transparent ones, or you could just use bits of washi tape and just add extra little layers where you think it needs it. The nice thing about pet tapes is because they are transparent, they still allow bits from underneath to show through. And before I put my quote on there, I'm going to add some gold paint marks. So again, I'm going to use a bit of the double tack mounting film. Now those things are in place, I'm just adding a bit of gold metallic paint. It's just acrylic paint. Just with some old lids. That just helps to kind of tie everything together and just bed it into the page a little bit. Now I've added my quote, just picking up the lines, those horizontal lines. And now just one more thing I want to add. Just for my final touch, I want to add some stickles just to the leaves here of my vine. And there we are. I'm calling that page done. True happiness can be found in the tiniest of things. I do just love the way that this matte film just disappears and sits beautifully on top of anything cream or manila, but how beautifully it sits as well on craft, shows a bit of the craft through. It's just a slightly more gentle way of building layers of collage, and this page fits in well with the rest of my collage style journal. Thank you so much for watching. I do hope you enjoy playing along with some of the Dura matte film.